Well, hello there. Happy Thanksgiving to those of you that celebrate it. Welcome back, everyone, for another jam-packed daily market update. We're going to be getting a little bit conspiratorial in regards to this recent pullback and what JPMorgan are now looking to do. They are introducing a effectively leveraged Bitcoin product on iBits or around iBits. It's very interesting given the suspected attack that has taken place for MicroStrategy and the price action that we're currently getting in the cryptocurrency space. There's a lot of interesting things that we're going to talk to you guys about in this one. There's also been the increased option limit to 1 million from 25,000 a year ago, which is interesting. And this is all in line with JPMorgan talking about crypto, Bitcoin being more of an institutional asset. The good news for altcoins is they are early in that evolution. However, I think there's certain cryptocurrencies that I have in my portfolio that I honestly think are going to underpin tomorrow's financial world. Some of them I'm a lot more confident than others, but I am confident that this technology is going to be used to do exactly that. You want to unlock my portfolio? Do consider becoming a Patreon and also getting up to date with our macro view of things. We very much derive that from a lot of what Mike Wilson is saying, a lot of what's happening with the real economy versus the sort of Mag 7 and Bitcoin. And I think there's really positive things coming ahead. Let's kick things off just with a Bitcoin price action, given the kind of fatigue and frustration people are feeling. This is, in my opinion, still an uptrend. We are not on the bear market camp. We want to see enough evidence to flip into that camp or support that camp and actually position accordingly. And first, one thing very simply that we're looking at is trend invalidation. I think it's very interesting. If you look at Bitcoin sentiment, it's really one of the lowest levels it's been in a long time. And that's always been a great buying opportunity. Typically, sentiment is very low at the kind of troughs of these pullbacks. And I ultimately think this is just a pullback until proven otherwise. This trend structure is still in play. And I really think that the macro picture that we have is very supportive for crypto. And actually also the macro picture in the way that I think it's going to shape up with that breadth opening up. It's not just going to be the sort of AI stocks, perhaps driven by CapEx and speculation, and Bitcoin driven by Bitcoin driven by the likes of BlackRock and institutions and the kind of FOMO. It's going to be more broad. It's going to be more spread out. And that should affect the altcoin sector. I think the S&P's done well, Bitcoin's done well, and there's been a number of others that have done well. But more broadly, smaller cap stocks, altcoins haven't, and that's because they're perhaps a lot more economically sensitive. I'll just show you guys this really quickly. I go into depth a lot more. You know, this is the PMI cycles, the Purchasing Manager Index. It's really a barometer for kind of economic activity. You can see it kind of goes in cycles. It's cyclical. If we look recently, for example, at Hedera, you can see how well these line up. And one reason I don't think you've quite had your alt season, which one is this? This is not quite the right one that we want. One reason I don't think you've quite had your alt season, although Hedera's actually done quite well considering. I believe this might be market cap, which is not what we want. We want US dollar. Okay. We don't want this one. Just give me a good chart for goodness sake. HBAR USD, just to show you this as Hedera, as many of you know, is one of my favorite alts. You know, you can see how this very much resembles PMI, which is more the sort of business economic cycle. And I think that's why you've not had your alt season. However, I do think we are on the cusp of that. It's another thing that makes us bullish, and I think we are looking at an economic recovery. You know, this is the S&P. We have a big plan on that. I don't really want to go into the macro stuff too much, but important for you guys to note that Bitcoin's still on an uptrend. I think the broader economic picture is a good one that is going to be supported by what we're seeing in earnings, what we're seeing more broadly, what the Fed's likely to do, so on and so forth. And I think that leads to continuation for the crypto space in perhaps more of a beneficiary way for altcoins. But time will tell. Ultimately, markets, we don't care about who's right in the short term on a day-to-day basis. We care about who's right in weeks to months to years basis. And that's really our primary focus as an investor. We're going to go down a bit of a rabbit hole now. This came out from JPMorgan yesterday. Crypto is emerging as a tradable macro asset. Crypto is moving away from resembling a venture capital style ecosystem to a typical tradable macro asset class supported by institutional liquidity rather than retail speculation. It talks about in the early stages how it was sort of private rounds that would push things up, and then they would use sort of retail as exit liquidity, and that's now more dormant, and crypto is more dependent on the big macro picture, which we think is a supportive one. It also talks about moving away from the 4-year cycle. It's very interesting because JPMorgan's coming out and saying a lot of this. They're also giving a Bitcoin price prediction, as there are rumors in regards to them penalizing or effectively doing things that are hindering MicroStrategy, which is effectively just a leveraged Bitcoin bet. Whether it's the influence via the MSCI that's talking about delisting DATs that have 50% of their assets in, or their business model in, cryptos, which MicroStrategy would fall under, most DATs would fall under, or strategy as it's now called. Why they made that change, I don't know. Maybe the ego's got in the way with the micro side of things. That, of course, would have ramifications. They wouldn't gain access to those passive flows. It would mean a kind of dumping of their stock to essentially make those adjustments, so on and so forth. And they also increased the collateral requirements to like 90 from wherever it was previously. It's very interesting that all that's happened, and they're now coming out and actually really excelling in regards to Bitcoin and getting involved with it. This is from the Bitcoin magazine. Just in, $4 trillion. JPMorgan filed to launch leveraged Bitcoin product linked to performance of BlackRock's BTC ETF. Who would have thought? This is very interesting. Clearly, I think is bullish for the space as a whole, because the largest bank, certainly in America, to the point where actually, if you're interested in finance, do go and look at who Jamie Dimon is and go and watch some biographies of him. He's a very... He is a great CEO, an amazing CEO. I know he's taboo because he's the sort of bad guy, the enemy system or whatever, but he's a genius, quite frankly, and you should always acknowledge that, whether you like somebody or not, if they've got meritable characteristics. And he's been very hostile, but it seems like they're very much getting into it, and the fact that they're doing that and offering these suggests they are sort of bullish on the future of it and expect demand for these products. This is the document. So JPMorgan Chase Financial Company LLC, structured investment, auto collabel, accelerated barrier notes linked to the iShares Bitcoin Trust ETF due the 5th of October 2028. Fully and unconditionally guaranteed by JPMorgan Chase & Co. Now this is interesting, because if you look at what MicroStrategy is, they are effectively a leveraged Bitcoin bet. Now, they want to get into that department, and there are rumors, speculation, some people would swear blind, that JPMorgan are actually or doing things, tinkering to effectively hinder MicroStrategy. And it's interesting because all the BTC maxis, like your Grant Cardones and people that have just now pivoted very heavily into Bitcoin from real estate, are effectively saying, like, boycott JPMorgan. And somebody was talking about how there might be a short on Bitcoin that would bankrupt JPMorgan. I don't think people understand the nature of who JPMorgan is, the systemical importance of it, and actually that they probably would be a little bit smarter than to risk the entire company to short Bitcoin. And these are coming from very liked, popular sort of financial figures. I mean, it's the world is a stage, ladies and gentlemen. Following on from all of this, so it's very interesting, all of that. This is from Jeff Park. I'm not 100% sure. Bitwise advisor. At last, the IBIT, coincidentally, options is finally getting, remember what JPMorgan are leveraging, IBIT, BlackRock's iShares. Option is finally getting the treatment it deserves. NASDAQ just filed to increase options limit to 1 million from 25,000 a year ago. Institutional vault is finally here. Happy Thanksgiving. And it's very interesting what JPMorgan are effectively doing and the timely nature of all of this, including perhaps we could link it back to crypto's recent pullback as the institutions are looking to enter and get on board. And where is retail? And we try and keep retail on the side of smart money. They're fatigued. They're panicked. I don't know what to say to people if this pullback turns out to be just that, because the way that I've seen people conduct themselves during this pullback makes me worried for humanity as a whole. because it's just people have been very easily, or would have been very easily manipulated. We're still yet to see. Look, this could be the start of a bear market. That's not our base case. That's not what we think is going to happen. Could it be? I can't say with 100% certainty not. But if we're right and it proves to be what we suggested, it's very interesting. The kind of manipulation of the masses, certainly the ones involved in crypto, that we would have seen as a result of all of this, or on the back end of all this, and it kind of makes me a little bit worried. And there's lots of people reporting on this. It's very interesting. Let me know what you guys think about the whole saga and situation. Is this just big manipulation of the markets? We've got a few more articles to get through. Let's dive into this. This is from Matthew Siegel, who's the head of digital asset research at Vanet. We'll go and give him a follow. Tether stability rating reduced to weak by the S&P. Bitcoin now represents 5.6% of USDT in circulation, exceeding the 3.9 over-collateralization margin, indicating the reserve can no longer fully absorb a decline in value. Ooh. People look at the amount of people. Tether is a black swan. Tether is this. Tether is that. It's not. Tether is a very successful company, and I don't think Tether is going anywhere. I think you see the confidence in that with who just joined their board, being Bo Hines. Tether stablecoin rating reduced to weak at the S&P. S&P Global Rating downgrades Tether USD stablecoins to a stability rating of weak due to its exposure to high-risk assets, including Bitcoin, and limited disclosure. A drop in Bitcoin's value could leave USDT uncollateralized, as Bitcoin now represents 5.6% of USDT in circulation, exceeding the over-collateralization margin. Tether disagrees with the report, stating that it applies a legacy framework that fails to capture the nature and importance of digital native money and overlooks data demonstrating USDT's resilience and transparency. Tether are a massive holder now of Bitcoin. I think, have I got this here? Yeah, pretty wild. This is from Simon Dixon and Coin Bureau. Shout out to both of them. Just in, Tether is now the largest independent gold holder globally, surpassed only by the central banks. So it's not just gold, it's also Bitcoin that they hold. And is this big level kind of, or big thought here, the future that we're moving towards? We're moving perhaps away from a dollar system. Doesn't mean the dollar, I say this and people go, oh, well, you think the dollar's not going to be used? No, it will. It's the ugliest, or the prettiest of the ugliest, if that makes sense. Fiat's ugly. It's the pretty ugly, if that makes sense. And are we moving towards a more kind of inclusive system as far as assets are concerned in regards to the global order of things that can be enabled by cryptocurrencies and the interchangeable nature of them, creating this kind of internet of value? Very interesting. This is Paolo's reply. The S&P regarding your Tether rating, or to the S&P regarding your Tether rating: we wear your loathing with pride. Oof. It's kind of the good versus the bad. I think this is mostly staged. The classical rating model, built for legacy financial institutions, historically led private and institutional investors to invest their wealth into companies that, despite being attributed investment grade ratings, collapsed, pushing worldwide, I like Paolo by the way, regulators to challenge such models, the independence and objective assessment of all major rating agencies. The traditional financial propaganda machine is growing worried when any company tries to defy the force of gravity of broken financial system. No company should dare to decouple itself from it. Tether instead built the first overcapitalized company in the financial industry with no toxic reserves, and yet is and remains extremely profitable. Tether is living proof that the traditional financial system is so broken that it's becoming feared by the emperors with no clothes. Oof, we love that. We talk about that in Algae all the time, the emperor with no clothes. If you don't know that one, do go and look into that kind of proverb, as it were. Very interesting. And I think Tether, their business model is US Treasuries. And and the yields that they generate. They made sure to make sure that stablecoins couldn't pass on yields. That's been in legislation globally. MiCA, Genesis Act. Oh, Genesis, getting biblical with it. There's a reason for that, because it would be systemically risky to the banks. And they have a problema in regards to crypto. And even Jamie Dimon would acknowledge technology can not eradicate the banking sector. That will exist in some form or other, but certainly shift it, and they're going to have no choice but to adopt this technology, quite literally. They already are. They're perhaps just not saying as much of it as they would. Bad news for my Spanish brothers and sisters. Spain will tax capital gains on Bitcoin at 47%. I've been warning you, EU countries are bankrupt and they will seize your... Well, I don't know about this, to be honest, the bankruptcy of them. I think everybody's bankrupt if you, in a traditional sense. Big Spain's summer party has proposed hiking crypto taxes to 47%. Critics say the plan targets Bitcoin. Oh, we don't want to see that. And also over here in the UK, the FCA, Conduct Authority, has launched a new stablecoin cohort with its regulatory sandbox, giving prospective issuers the chance to test products in a controlled environment, gain direct regulatory support, and help shape the UK's emerging stablecoin regime. We had our budget yesterday. I have got an accountant actually coming on the show potentially to talk to us about all of that. We'll see. Obviously in a non-advisory way, just his knowledge and to share it. A lot going on. I've never been so bullish on the cryptocurrency space, and that's at a time when most people have capitulated. If you look at Google Trends as it relates to crypto, it's very non-existent. People don't want to know, and I think the alt season that we've had is explainable by the sort of more broad economic landscape, not just the Mag 7 and Bitcoin that have had narratives, they've had funding, they've, the rest of the markets are kind of like a bit of a desert. I think there's a change coming, and I think that propels everything to the upside. So from me, ladies and gents, I'm going to love and leave you. Thanks everyone for watching. I'll see you all in the next one.